This episode is presented by Visit Cedar City Bryan Head Tourism Bureau. Discover the art of adventure at Utah's gateway to the parks. Cedar City is within a few hours' drive from 6 different national parks and monuments, and only 30 minutes from fresh snow at Bryan Head Resort. Check out visitcedarcity.com to plan your next trip. This episode is sponsored by the Cedar City Business and Innovation Center. Dedicated to supporting local businesses and entrepreneurs, it provides resources and services aimed at fostering business creation, growth, and retention. To learn more and get involved, visit innovationcenter.cc. Hello and welcome to the Explore Local podcast presented by Visit Cedar City Bryan Head in partnership with Cedar City Iron County Economic Development, produced by Dallas Smith Media, and I'm your host, David Johnson. All right, today we have William Heyborne, who's with Southern Utah University. He is the Dean of the College of STEM, also known as Bill. So Bill, welcome.
Hey, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, okay, College of STEM, I think nowadays, STEM is in most people's vernacular, but do you want to give what the acronym is for?
Yeah, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And, we may get into this in a moment, but when we formed the college a number of months ago, we intentionally chose that name because STEM has a certain cachet these days. So, I think people generally understand what that means. It's a lot of disciplines combined into a single college. So we were glad that we could use that acronym, STEM. Yeah.
Now, and maybe you don't know, but my understanding way back in the day when the STEM acronym started was kind of an idea to, and correct me, and maybe you don't know, but I thought originally the STEM was for or utilizing that term, I'm really stammering here, but was sort of to encourage young women to get into the sciences. It was almost like a program in elementary schools and high schools and things like that. Is there truth behind that? That was kind of my understanding back in the day.
For a few decades now, there's been a shortage of individuals working in those areas.
Uh-huh.
You think about the tech industry and the real areas of economic growth.
Yeah.
A lot of them are in those technology, engineering, science fields.
Yeah.
And so in an effort to attract more young people into those degree areas, someone coined the term STEM. It's kind of catchy and fun. And so it wasn't just young women,
That's
but
what I was
young
going to ask.
people
So it wasn't.
in
It was
general,
just young
right?
people in general needing more to get into the sciences.
Yeah. And women are still quite underrepresented in most areas of STEM. And so there continues to be a focus on attracting more women, diversity of ideas and thought and all those things. So, but not limited there.
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense because the age-old complaint of any student not in college or younger than college is, I hate math. When are we ever going to use math, right? And STEM was kind of a great way to say, hey, we use math in everything. In fact, I tell my kids that all the time. I've always told them that. And I can't remember if I feel like deja vu, like I've said this on the podcast. I say math is in everything. And
Absolutely.
they'll try to, and I'll say, test me. They're like, what about color? You can gauge the depth of the color of green or whatever. You can measure anything. I'm like, math is in everything. And I'm not even like this mathematician, this sciences kind of guy. I'm like, but just go ahead, challenge me. Math is in any and everything you think of because we can measure and calculate or volumize, if you want to make that a word, about anything, Anyways.
It's the language of the universe. So you're absolutely right. It is in everything. And, I think, unfortunately, for a number of years, we did our young people a disservice the way that we were teaching science and technology and mathematics because it became this kind of rote memorization of facts, right? Memorizing equations rather than trying to understand the why behind all of that and learning how to use all those tools to just learn about the world.
Right.
And so that was part of this whole STEM movement, was to reinvigorate the way that we taught those disciplines. And that's just kind of flooded over into higher education now. So we talk about STEM as this collection of disciplines and the kind of common ways of thinking about how we can know about the universe, I guess.
Yeah.
So science is one way, mathematics is another way, et cetera.
Yeah.
So it's pretty fun.
Yeah. In fact, and sorry, maybe it's because I have 3 teenagers in my house, but one of my daughters severely hates math.
Yeah.
And I think it was just last night, I was talking to her. She was talking about something that was actually going well for her, and she's like, "Yeah, all I have to do is follow these steps." And I said to her, "I'm like, you know what? That's with some of this other math that you've been doing and these equations. That's all an equation is. It's saying take a problem, plug it into the equation. The equation is the steps to get you to your answer. I'm oversimplifying it, but it's really that simple. That's all math is. There's scientifically, mathematically proven ways to solve problems, and sometimes in math, engineering, there's maybe more than one way to get the same answer.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and interestingly, there's been a lot of criticism recently about new math, right?
Yeah.
And the way that
and
grade
core
schools,
math and all that.
the way that grade schools are teaching math, because it's very different than the way that you and I learned to do math.
Yeah, it's not the
right
carrier one and all that stuff.
Right. But I think the beauty in all of that is there's an attempt now to help young people understand the why behind it, so that it's not so mechanistic.
Yeah.
You don't just have to memorize an equation. There's a way of thinking mathematically, and you're absolutely right. There are multiple ways that you can solve a mathematical problem, and the quote new math is an attempt to try to get kids to understand that.
The biggest irony that I found, and I'll stop with this digression after this, but the biggest irony there's a couple things with it, is when I first learned how like this new math, this core math worked, and I'm talking the very basic, like in elementary school. I'm like, when you add like 532 plus 476, and first you add the hundreds and then the tens and then the ones, or vice versa. I said to my wife and my kids, I'm like, well, that's how you do it in your head. That may not be how you do it on paper, but that's how you solve it in your head. And all they're trying to do, even though it seems longer and more drawn out, they're trying to teach you how to solve it on paper the way we just intuitively do it in our head. But the irony, and I think so many people got frustrated, was instead of doing it the old way, they were only allowed to do it this new way, rather than embracing, there's multiple ways to solve it. And I'm like, well, that's because they're trying to teach you how to do it this way and trying to teach you how to do it this way. And then eventually you can meld it all together.
Well, I certainly remember sitting at the kitchen table with one of my kids trying to help with math homework. And I'm looking at the book or, whatever, the handout. And I'm thinking, what in the world are they trying to get you to do here?
Right.
But then as I stepped back and thought, okay, what are they trying to get you to do here? And I sort of thought through it. You're exactly right. It is the intuitive way to do it, rather than this kind of mechanistic, memorized way that I had learned. So I certainly can appreciate the attempt there.
So let's get a little bit, before we dive into the school and all those things, let's talk a little bit about you. What is your background? What was your undergrad in? I assume you have graduate degrees. Talk a little bit more about that, and then we can dive into your career and what got you to where you're at now.
Cool. Well, I'm a Southern Utah boy through and through.
My really? Where'd you grow up?
Family have been here for multiple generations. I grew up in Kanab, which is where my mom's family was from, but my dad's family was from here in Cedar City. So the Heybornes originally came to Cedar City around 1860, something like that.
Oh, wow.
And so there's been a long
Great
history.
pioneer stock.
Oh, absolutely. You go to SUU and the founding story about Old Main and whatever, the Heyborne name is there, so it's kind of fun.
Cool.
So this is where my dad grew up, went to Cedar High School, and he had enrolled at what was then the Southern Utah State College, SUSC, and my mom came over from Kanab, so that's where they met and eventually married. And my mom took my dad back to Kanab, so that's where I did most of my growing up. But my grandparents were always here in Cedar City, so we would come and visit them and stay with them in the summer and go to the Shakespeare Festival and spend time on campus and whatever. So I ended up getting my undergraduate degree here at SUU. This is not where I started, but I ended up sort of transferring here. It was a long story. I very begrudgingly transferred to SUU. But it was amazing. I ended up having a phenomenal experience here. It was one of the best decisions. It was kind of foisted on me, right?
But sometimes life's decisions come that way.
Right? So it ended up being this amazing opportunity, just so many great mentors here. So I did an undergraduate degree here at SUU. I originally came thinking I was going to be a veterinarian. And then that changed multiple times along the way, and I did all the prereqs for medical school and wasn't really interested in that. I thought I might be a teacher for a while. And then I did a practicum at the old Cedar Middle School, and it took me about 10 minutes to realize I could never be a middle school teacher.
It takes a very special kind of person.
Yeah, right?
Just like it takes a special person to, like, you know, be a nurse or a CNA. That's only certain kind of people have the mentality.
Yeah,
for
some
that.
of those folks are my heroes.
Yeah, exactly.
So I ended up completing a degree in zoology, so the
Okay.
study of animals, right? And then I had a professor challenge me to go to graduate school, and I didn't even really know what that meant. I knew that my professors had graduate degrees, but I didn't really know the ins and outs of that.
And what was the value of it?
Yeah,
and all
exactly,
that? Yeah.
exactly. So talking with him and some of the other faculty there, I decided, I think I'll give this graduate school thing a try. So applied multiple places, got accepted multiple places, but I ended up at Oregon State University.
Oh, okay.
And had a great experience there. Did a master's degree in entomology, which is
Okay.
the study of insects.
Oh, okay.
I learned as an undergraduate that I was really interested in biodiversity. So why are there so many different things that live on the planet, and how do they interact with one another? And insects are the most diverse group of organisms that have ever inhabited the planet. So it seemed like a logical place to study. So I was actually looking at the effect of humans on ecosystems, but I was using insects as a way to try to measure that. So that was kind of fun work. So master's degree at Oregon State, and then I ended up at the time waiting for the young woman who was to become my wife to finish a degree. And so I started teaching in the community college system in Oregon. And I was driving up and down the I-5 corridor, teaching at several different institutions, but realized I really liked being in the classroom. That was a really invigorating environment for me. And so
just not middle school kids.
Not middle school kids. Yeah. Well, it was interesting there because in the community college system, the vast majority of my students were working adults.
Yeah.
They were coming back
They're
to try to
non-traditional.
retool. Not traditional. I had some traditional students, but the majority were non-traditional students.
Yeah.
Knowing the background of your wife, my oldest student was 72.
Oh, wow.
A woman who had spent her entire career as a nursing assistant, CNA.
Oh, really?
And she'd kind of done it out of necessity because she was widowed at a young age and had a bunch of young children.
Yeah.
And so she just worked in that profession her entire life, but always felt a little bit like a second-class citizen. So she had been retired for almost a decade and finally decided she was going to go back to school and get a nursing degree.
Really?
And so that's what she was pursuing. And so one of my favorite students.
That's awesome.
Just a very different sort of motivation than an 18-year-old, right?
That's actually kind of my wife. My wife originally wanted to be a physical therapist, and she got a degree in biology, and then ended up working in biology right out of college. And then years later, after we'd had a few kids, at the hospitals, and it takes a very, I love my wife, but it takes a very different mindset to be at a hospital and think, ooh, I like this here, after just having a baby. And that happened to her a couple times, and she decided to go back and get a degree in nursing. She became a CNA and then became a nurse and stuff. So the non-traditional, we have a very affinity. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but a special place in our hearts for the non-traditional of going back. Yeah,
absolutely.
Although
Cool
she didn't do it when she was 72 or whatever
right,
you said. But
well, this woman, she knew she would never work again.
Yeah.
She just wanted to prove to herself that she could have done it had she had that opportunity. It was
that
really
is
inspiring.
so awesome.
Yeah, it was really inspiring.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I found out I loved teaching college students.
Yeah.
And so I decided I'd go on and get a PhD. So I was looking for programs that would not only help me develop as a scientist, but also help me hone my craft as a university teacher. And so I ended up at the University of Northern Colorado. They have a program in biological education. And it was great because there was a faculty member there who I was really interested in working with, kind of another element of biodiversity. His name's Steve Mackesy, dear friend. He studies venoms, venomous snakes, venomous spiders, and all the molecules that are in venom, right? And that's another element of diversity.
Interesting.
And then, while he's more interested in kind of the, why do these animals have venom and how does that relate to their prey and all that kind of stuff. the bigger questions in all of that are there unique molecules in that venom that might be useful in a human context for medicines or as tools to learn about physiology.
Or murder. Sorry. Yeah,
we would consult sometimes on like TV shows and whatever where there were storylines about using venom for murder. Yeah.
That's
so there's a CSI episode that my advisor consulted on while I was a student there. Yeah.
That's actually where my mind went, is those TV shows where they use the snake venom.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a story for another day.
Sorry to throw that in.
No, it's totally fine. So I spent 5 years of my life traveling around the world, collecting snakes, extracting their venom, then using kind of sophisticated biochemistry to tear the venom apart and try to figure out what's in there and how does it work and how does that relate to that animal and what they eat. So that was a really fun part of my life. My wife at the time was working in preschools. Her specialty is children with autism. And so she would come home in the evening and be sharing her stories about these kids and their challenges and their struggles, and I would just shake my head and think, I could never do your job.
Yeah.
And then I would tell her about my day, almost getting bitten by a snake or or whatever, and she would shake her head and say, I could never do your job. So that was kind of our story for those years.
That's awesome.
I ended up teaching at an institution in the Midwest for a few years right out of grad school, and then my family was here, and my wife's family had moved to southern Utah from Oregon while we were away. So all the family was here, and there was all this pressure. When are you going to come back to southern Utah? And there wasn't really ever a job opening that really fit my expertise and my interests. So I just kept kind of putting it off. And then a job came open at SUU back in 2011 that did fit, and I thought, okay, here's my chance. I'm going to apply for that job.
Yeah.
I won't get it, but I can tell everybody, sorry, I didn't get the job.
I tried.
At least get them off my back.
Yeah.
I tried, and I could stay at the job that I loved in the Midwest, right? But I applied, and then it was boom, boom, boom. Yes, we want you to come. And so clearly, this is where I ended up. And I'm really grateful that I did. It's been really, really fun to be back in my alma mater, kind of on the other side of that teaching, learning continuum. And I hope helping to create for today's students the same sorts of opportunities that other faculty created for me back when I was a student here.
What I think's interesting is twice, I'm razzing you a little bit, but I'm also bringing up a point, is twice you resisted coming to SUU, and both times you ended up here.
And the better for it.
And that was the point I was going to make, is sometimes, and I don't want to get too life philosophical, but sometimes the things we fight are the very things calling us in some ways, you know? So what was that initial job when you first came to SUU?
So a faculty member in biology. Yeah. Okay. So teaching some zoology courses and introductory biology. So that was my original role, and I still teach some. In an administrative capacity, there's much less time for teaching, but the expectation of SUU is still that administrators do spend some time in the classroom, which I think is a really great philosophy.
Agreed.
So taught full time for a number of years, and then I took a little bit of a detour and taught half time while I stood up the STEM Center. And so this was back in 2014. We got some legislative support to create a STEM Center to do outreach to southern Utah communities, to K-12 kids, right?
Yeah.
To try to get more of them interested in STEM disciplines. And so I worked in that space for a few years. Then went back to faculty for a couple of years, and then I was in the provost's office for a while, and then I've been a dean the last few years.
Okay. So originally it was you were in the school. Was it natural sciences or?
Yeah. So there's been a number of changes. It was the College of Science and Engineering for a while, and then that was split up into 3 colleges a number of years ago. It was College of Health Science, College of Natural Science, and the College of Engineering and Computational Science. And so I became the dean of the College of Natural Sciences. So that's where I worked for a few years. And then just a year ago, the last legislative session, House Bill 265 mandated some realignments and reprioritizations at institutions across the state. And so one of the decisions that SUU made was to combine the College of Natural Science and the College of Engineering and Computational Sciences together. And so last July, we became the College of STEM.
Yeah.
So, and I was asked to be the dean of that new college. So
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so why don't you highlight for us, just kind of high level, what are I'm sure there's dozens of degrees, but what are the science, technology, engineering, math, but what are some of those classic degrees that people go for in your school?
Yeah, great question. So there are 6 departments in the college. So biology, chemistry and physics, geoscience, engineering and technology, computer science and cybersecurity, and mathematics.
Cybersecurity, interesting.
Yeah, so that gives you a kind of a sense of the different types of degrees. Engineering has, I think, 6 different programs in that department.
Yeah.
So several different lines of engineering, plus engineering technology, construction management. Math has a couple different degrees. Biology, a couple different degrees. Geoscience has geology, but also has environmental science and geospatial science, which is GIS. All that mapping stuff. So it's a really diverse array of programs. Over 100 faculty. So it's a big college, lots of students. And even if students aren't majoring in our disciplines, because we have math and because we have life science and physical science, when students are at SUU doing general education, they have to take at least 3 of our courses. So there's just a lot of support work that we do for the rest of the institution.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what was the geo one that you said?
The Department of Geoscience.
Geoscience. What are the ones in that one again?
Yeah, geology.
Oh, it is geology.
Yeah, environmental science and geospatial science.
Geology. So I went to USU, BYU, and the U of U.
I started out at Utah State.
Did you? So that's where I started out too. Long story short, I chased a girl to BYU. That didn't work out, and then I met my wife who was at USU, and I'm like, I should have just stayed. But anyways, but I remember one of the I had to take a general ed science class, and I took geology. And I didn't think about it at the time. Retrospectively, I've thought about it several times throughout the years, but I loved that class. It came naturally to me. I'm not a big sciences kind of guy, but I loved that class. And in fact, when I had transferred to BYU, I ran into someone, and her and I figured out that we both had gone to USU at the same time. We both had transferred about the same time. And I said something about, I took this geology class. I loved it. And she's like, wait, you were that kid that always asked questions and always had the answers in class. It was one of those bigger classes.
Oh, nerd alert.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah, that was me. Because usually in college, even though I'm a talkative, sociable person, in my college classes, I was generally quiet. But that class brought something out of me that I didn't realize. And throughout the years, I've gone back and thought, man, if I was to go into something in the sciences, I think that would have been it.
Well, you bring up a really interesting point. Fortunately, we live in a part of the world where geology is really evident. I mean, you can see it, right? It's dry here, so it's not covered by a bunch of vegetation like it is in the east, right? So we grow up kind of looking at landforms and feel comfortable sort of thinking about landforms.
Yeah.
So it does end up being something that resonates with a lot of students. There's no longer an earth science requirement at the high school level.
Oh, okay.
And so there's very little exposure to earth science, geology, right?
Yeah.
Among students, young students, K-12 students. So we don't get a ton of students coming into SUU saying they're going to be a geoscience major.
Right.
Their biggest source of recruitment is actually students like you who come and take a Geology 1000 something course to satisfy a general education requirement. And then they realize, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
We have a course called the Geology of the National Parks.
Oh, really?
Which is a super popular class, right?
I would love
so there's
that,
field trips, so you're going to area parks and then the faculty member is there to help you understand what it is you're seeing in that national park. How did the cliffs in Zion form? How do the hoodoos form at Cedar Breaks or at Bryce? That sort of thing. Students love it.
Yeah, the
so
difference
they end
between
up kind of matriculating over.
The difference between my kids and I, because we do a lot of hiking, my wife and kids and I, what's the difference between an arch and a bridge?
Yeah.
And
all that stuff.
Yeah, the different layers. I mean, I apparently I am more of a nerd nit than I realize, because now that we're talking, there have been times where we're like driving on the highway somewhere on a road trip, and I stop because I see layers on the side where they've cut for the highway, and I go and I like pull some of the rocks out of the different layers.
There's a book called Roadside Geology of Utah. You should pick this up. Put it in the glove compartment of your car.
That would be awesome.
Because then when you make those stops, you can flip open to that page, right? And because there are professional geologists who've interpreted all of those road cuts and whatever. So then you can know the age and the rock formations.
That would be sweet. Yeah. I'm gonna have to look that up, because I remember one time I was so just enamored by one. I'm like, I bet if I should take this to one of the this is years ago. In my mind, I'm like, I should take this to one of the universities. I bet there's like fossils in here.
Oh gosh, my geologists, they're hit up all the time by people bringing them stuff. Yeah. Well, maybe just a little plug to parents who might be listening to the podcast.
Yeah.
If you have a kid who's interested in STEM, interested in the sciences, direct them into geology. There are so many jobs. We cannot produce enough geologists, right? And starting salaries for geologists are among the highest of any degree at the university.
Really?
So close to 6 figures right out of a bachelor's
degree. I never
degree.
would have guessed that.
Right?
And I feel like that's, forgive me for saying this to all those in the sciences, particularly to the geologists, but I feel like that's an easier gateway science, in some ways, because you're not, well, maybe there's, I don't know, you'll have to tell me, but, some people like who struggle with math or chemistry and some of those types of things, but maybe, and I felt like that's why I resonated with geology, is it was practical, it was visible, I could see it.
Yeah, I think it feels very accessible.
I can internalize it better, accessible. Yeah, that's.
The reality is, in order to get a geology degree, you've got to take
all those other
physics
classes.
and chemistry and math, right?
Yeah.
So it's all embedded there. But I think because there is this very real world application, you can see your science, right?
Yeah.
Studying physics or chemistry, you can't always see the phenomena that you're studying. And that's different in geology. So I think it makes it a little more accessible to some people.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I loved physics in high school, because some of the applicable type things, engineering's fun that.
Yeah.
And in my job, in economic development, even though I'm out doing business recruitment, business retention, I work with engineers, chemists even, or chemical engineers and civil engineers and mechanical engineers. And I work with these folks all the time.
Yeah, particularly industries that are so prevalent here in Cedar City.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of those folks in those jobs.
Yeah. You know what? In fact, with engineering, on that note, because we have a lot of manufacturers here in town, and we have a lot of companies that look at Iron County and Southern Utah specifically, talk about the existing engineering degrees. Mm-hmm. And I know that there's some companies chomping at the bit for you to have even to add new engineering degrees. So talk about what you have and maybe what the future holds in some of those degrees.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we have 3 engineering degrees at SUU: mechanical, civil, and electrical. Mm-hmm. Electrical is fairly new for us.
But those are kind of like the classical engineering
degrees. They are
degrees.
The classical engineering degrees. The most in demand, the most kind of versatile. So they make the most sense for us here at SUU.
Sure.
Because we're talking about all these manufacturing firms that are in town, right? And most of them employ a handful of engineers, but it's only a handful, right?
Yeah.
And so those folks who are working in those firms, they need to be very very fluid in terms of their engineering skills.
Yeah.
They can't afford to hire a very specific type of engineer, I guess.
You got to be a little more jack of all trades.
Yeah, a little bit.
Broad understanding.
Yep, for sure. So it makes sense that we prioritize those areas here at SUU. We also support engineering technology degrees, and so the engineering degrees are a little bit more theoretical. While the engineering technology degrees are a little bit more applied, but they definitely work hand in hand, and there's a lot of overlap in terms of the coursework and the skills that people take from those different degrees. But you're absolutely right. I can think of at least 2 firms here in town who are thinking about fairly large-scale expansions, and are going to need more engineers. In one case, maybe 80 additional engineers, right? And so there's a ton of potential. And that, for me, as the dean and trying to think about finding jobs for our students post-degree, it's incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
At SUU, we attract a lot of kids from rural Utah. They feel very comfortable on our campus. Cedar City's not too big.
Yeah.
SUU has a very kind of homey feel. So we attract a lot of these students. They come, they get degrees. It's hard for them to go back to Circleville or Tropic or Kanab or wherever and get an engineering job, right?
Right.
So they end up moving then to the Wasatch Front or the Las Vegas area or even further afield. I would love to have more engineering jobs right here in southern Utah, right? So, Cedar City's not Circleville, right? But it's a lot closer than Las Vegas.
Right.
So there's tremendous capacity here, and we certainly appreciate the work that you're doing out trying to attract those firms here, because again, it provides a place for our students to work and for them to be able to stay close to home.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, people may in interviewing you and having you on the podcast, hopefully people are starting to make the connection, but I'm assuming there's some that might think, well, why in economic development are you just talking to the school? Because I've done several interviews with people from SUU, but SUU and Southwest Tech are such critical partners in the workforce pipeline when I'm trying to attract businesses, whether it's a manufacturer or even just construction companies or whatever.
Absolutely.
It's such our relationship with the universities, and to have a Division I university here in Cedar City, it really gives us an advantage to attract these businesses. So I don't know if you wouldn't mind maybe talking about some of your relationships with some of the businesses, some of the manufacturers. I know there's MCM and MCM Engineering. There's American Pacific, people often call WECO. There's several businesses. I don't know if maybe you could give a highlight of some of those business relationships in helping create that workforce pipeline for these companies.
Absolutely. Well, it's the goal of SUU as well, right? To get students into jobs once they finish a degree.
Yeah.
It's one thing to recruit them here and educate them, but we need to make sure that they've got somewhere to go when they're done, right? So, economic development and the development of the workforce is just as important to SUU as it is to you and your team. So there is definitely this collaboration that occurs. We love our partners at Southwest Tech, right? Because when an employer comes into the area and they need skilled workers, if they need 4-year degrees, we can step right up and help create those opportunities. If they don't need 4-year degrees, they need some sort of technical training, whatever, Southwest Tech is there. And because of our dual enrollment relationship, students can enroll at one or the other institution and take courses at the other place with no extra cost, right? So there is this beautiful educational sort of environment that we've created here.
Very symbiotic kind of
very much so,
yeah.
very much so. So in terms of partners, Chris Griffiths and out at American Pacific, they've been great partners for a very long time.
Yeah.
A lot of our alumni work out there. We place students there in internships. They've got a big expansion that's going to be happening, so we're excited about those opportunities.
$100 million expansion there,
$100 million expansion, right? And so engineers, chemists, lots of highly skilled individuals work for that company. So we love that relationship. We sincerely appreciate the reciprocity between those two institutions because they help to support our programs at SUU, and we can then supply them with talent. MCM Engineering out in Enoch, another really great partner. If I remember my statistics right, they've hired 29 of our graduates, in the 20-ish years or so that they've been in the area. A lot of them have been there for, since the company moved into town, which is just remarkable, right?
And now they're going to go from 90 employees to 250 employees over the next 10 years.
Right.
And I think their facilities are going to, I think it's more than quadruple in size, their facility.
Yeah.
And they're owned by the parent company LS Electric, which if people don't know, LS Electric used to be part of LG, the technology company, split off, and LS Electric actually helps. They build a variety of things, but they're actually going to help with some of these manufacturers throughout the state are dealing with shortages in equipment supply.
Yep.
And LS Electric and MCM Engineering can help mass produce some of the things that have been holding manufacturers and businesses up for the last little bit. I mean, on a transformer, we've been told 18 to 36 months on some of those things. Well, Ellis Electric, the parent company, that's what they do. And so through MCM Engineering's expansion, it's actually going to help buoy up a lot of these other companies trying to come here.
Yeah, we think about Governor Cox's Project Gigawatt initiative, right? We can only move as quickly as the technology and the equipment allows us to move. So there's a critical role for MCM Engineering and Ellis Electric. It was a pleasure to meet their corporate team that was here a few weeks ago for the sort of kickoff to that new facility. Just again, tremendous partnership, right? And an opportunity for local kids to come get a degree in engineering, right? And potentially work for a local firm and not have to leave Southern Utah. This is a great place to raise a family, right?
Yeah.
And so partnerships with companies like that are the reason that can happen.
Now, in that relationship with them, with the different companies, and I want to talk about past and talk about potential. But in that relationship, have there been opportunities where these companies have come to you and Southwest Tech and said, hey, we really need X. Can you help us figure out how to get X? Do you have examples like that where you've had?
I think that Southwest Tech is a little bit more agile
to be able to do that.
To be able to do that,
certificates and trainings.
Exactly. So if we're trying to stand up 4-year degrees in a particular area, that takes some time, right? But we do have our Community Workforce Development Office, CWD, at SUU. This is Melinda Thorpe and her team.
That's right.
It's all about providing those sorts of learning opportunities for industry, right? So if Southwest Tech can't stand it up, perhaps SUU can. And so we do have the ability to custom develop these learning opportunities, be them short-term or long-term, for individual companies, so that their team members can get the training that they need in order to be successful in their workplace.
So my next question is going to kind of put you on the spot, so forgive me, and you don't have to have like a diplomatic answer to it, because it might be, well, we just can't do that right now. But a couple of things that I hear from some of the companies is, and they do hire students right out of school, but a lot of times I'll hear, well, we need someone with a few years experience or a little bit of experience. I also hear, we need chemical engineers, specific kind of things. And the university doesn't quite have those yet. So are there things you do? I know, for example, when I was getting my undergrad in public relations, and in my master's degree in public administration, we had to go get internships and fellowships to get that on the grounds experience, so that when we left, we could actually get a job.
Yeah.
Do you, in your programs, whether engineering or some of these other things, what are some of those kind of things you do to help prepare outside of just the academia, out of the books? Because everybody's like, oh, that's just academics. They don't know until they get in the real world. And there is truth to that. But universities, for, I would say, the past 2 or 3 decades have honed up and really more and more focused on getting practical experience during the degree.
Absolutely. So those 6 departments that I mentioned, every single one of those departments has an internship opportunity. So you can actually get credit, right, for going and working in industry somewhere. And so we're very supportive of those. Some of those programs require an internship as part of that, part of their 4-year degree. We're a little bit hamstrung because of our geographic location, right? We're in Cedar City. So there are limited opportunities locally for internships, and I don't want to
dissuade or...
I just want to say I'm so grateful for local partners who are able to provide internship opportunities, right? So I don't want to belittle any of the partnerships that we have, but the reality is there's not enough here locally for everybody to do an internship locally.
Right. And that's actually part of where my job comes into play, is trying to recruit businesses to help help people be able to stay here. They come to
Absolutely.
school here or they grew up here to stay here, and create more of those opportunities.
Yeah.
And for people to come back as well. But sorry, I interjected. So it's not lost upon us locally that we sometimes our kids have to go elsewhere for these opportunities.
Yeah. Well, and so I guess that was my very long way of saying we don't require an internship for everybody.
Oh,
because it's not possible, right?
Yeah.
The demographics of the student population at SUU are such that a large percentage of them are married, maybe have young children, right? And so you say, okay, you're required to do an internship. Well, if that means you have to move to Salt Lake or to Denver or to Las Vegas for a summer or a semester, right? That's not a possibility for some of those individuals. So we don't require internships in all of those areas because it would inconvenience or keep some people from getting a degree. But that doesn't mean we're not supportive of that, and we encourage it every step of the way. Another piece of this House Bill 265 budget reprioritization that SUU has done, we've used a portion of those reclaimed funds to hire career advisors that will be embedded in each of the colleges, of the 6 colleges at the university. So we're super excited. Our career advisor will just be joining us on March 15th. We're waiting her to finish another contract. She'll come and join us. So it will be her full-time job to help students find internships and find jobs on the back end
so
of their
they're going to be very integrated with the companies here in town.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to find those needs. And that's actually kind of what I was getting at. I wanted to talk, well, what are the things you need? How can the business community say, oh, I've got this opportunity? Because I can't tell you the number of times where I've heard throughout my career, not just here locally, where I've heard, well, why don't we get someone from the university? Or, you know what? One time we had some students do this. And I always see it go one or two ways. And they get students. One is they go, wow, these students put something together and it blew us away and we could actually apply it. And then I see the other one. They were just checking off a box. They didn't really give us a lot of value. And so maybe I'm just speaking rhetorically or, speaking out loud more than asking a question. But how can businesses work with you, and who do they reach out to? And maybe it's this new career advisor to say, hey, we have opportunities for your students to get some of that real world experience.
Yeah. Well, I think the beauty of Southern Utah University is still we're a small enough community that most people on campus kind of know one another. So literally you could reach out to anybody associated with the university. And if they don't know the answer, they can find the person who does, right? So anybody in the area from industry who has need in the STEM area, feel free to reach out to me, and I would be more than happy to connect them with the career advisor or a department chair or a subject area expert in whatever area they're seeking some expertise. All of the faculty at the university, part of their contract is to engage in service, including service to the community, right? So they're eager and willing to go out and consult and help and collaborate on things. So it's often just a matter of finding the matchmaker, right?
Yeah.
Who can put people together, and I'm happy to fill that role. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the reason why I bring that up is I think there's probably and I agree with what you're saying is that we're kind of at least Cedar City. Iron County is still very classical rural. Cedar City is kind of this transitioning rural community, and opportunities are coming up. We may not have all the opportunities as far as internships, but what I'm getting at is I actually think there's more opportunities than we're probably aware of.
I think you're right.
And I think it's just a matter, and that career advisor thing I think is going to be great. I think it's just a matter of truly connecting the businesses with the opportunities that these students can bring. Sometimes some of my favorite employees have been someone right out of college or doing an internship because there's kids. Some kids are there, like I was saying earlier, to just kind of check off the box, get their requirement done. But if somebody's really there for experiential learning and to actually make something out of what they're studying, man, those kids are on fire and will produce some of the coolest things for you and some of the most usable things because they're so honed in on that one little thing rather than being thinned out by a million different projects that they have on their plate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm just thinking about some other kind of more recent examples of really cool collaborations between local industry and the university.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe one that I'll just share. GAF, right, the local roofing manufacturer, reached out to the university and said, hey, we have a waste disposal problem. We create a large amount of waste in our manufacturing process. We don't want to just be sending all of this to the landfill. Could you help us figure out better, more sustainable ways to deal with this waste? And so there was a team assembled at the university, an interdisciplinary team of students, engineers, and folks from business, and I don't know who they all were, but this interdisciplinary group of students, they met with the team out at GAF, and they learned what the need was, and then the students went to work trying to figure out, okay, here are some possible strategies for dealing with this stream of waste, and then they went back to GAF and presented all of their possibilities, and GAF then had the opportunity to implement those in their business, right? They threw a little bit of money at it so that students had the resources they needed to kind of do that work, but not a lot of cash.
Sure.
And it ended up being this amazing learning opportunity for the students, and a local business got some expertise that they didn't have access to otherwise.
Right.
Those sorts of opportunities, they're infinite, really, in this interface.
Well,
so
I like that example because not only are there probably existing opportunities, but maybe there are problems that existing businesses have or manufacturers have, and they've been hitting their head against the wall because maybe they don't have the time, resources, or staffing to really dive in to solve this problem, but it's been going on for a while. Why not just reach out to the university and say, hey,
Absolutely.
Can we put together a little think tank of students and faculty to say, how do we address this problem?
Maybe
what a
we
great
make this
case study.
Yeah, maybe we make this a capstone project in a course, or or maybe it's completely extracurricular, and we just assemble these students. These students, it's a different generation. They approach the world, they approach problems different than our generation, right? And so that alone is sort of a value add. You then overlay on that the expertise that they've been developing as a budding engineer or business management student, or whatever. You get this really cool synergy that can be pretty remarkable.
That's awesome. So tell me your why. Why you found that when you were talking about the community college and teaching, you found a passion for teaching college-age kids, non-traditional students. You had this passion for kind of the life sciences, or and dealing with venomous snakes. But why are you doing what you do now? Why do you love and enjoy what you're doing now?
Great question. I realized I wanted to do something in science back in like the third grade. I can't remember exactly when. Wow. I did a TEDx talk a few years ago, and I told this story as part of my TEDx talk, but Kanab Elementary School, right? Mm-hmm. I remember a sweaty, sticky May afternoon right near the end of the school year. We're having an assembly, right? We're sitting on the floor in the old gymnasium at the old Kanab Elementary School. I was right on the front row, and a science educator from what was then the Hansen Planetarium. It's changed names, from Salt Lake. He came down, right? He's going to do this program for us, and one of the demonstrations that he did, he had a big canister full of liquid nitrogen, and he took a racquetball, a rubber ball, used a pair of forceps, dunked it down in that liquid nitrogen, and then brought it out, dropped it, and that thing shattered, right?
Yeah.
And those pieces of the ball kind of went all over the floor. One of them came right up in front of me, and I picked it up, right? And I, in that moment, I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like science, right?
Yeah.
I was just overcome with this fascination and this wonder for that thing that I had just seen. That was a formative moment for me, and I knew that my life was going to be spent in science somehow, right? Fortunately, I had parents who were really, especially a mom, who was just so supportive of me, because I was the kid who brought home the frogs and the bugs and whatever in my pockets, and my mom always showed interest in that with me, right? In fact, one time I remember finding a a dove with a broken leg or a broken wing. I don't even remember. But outside, I brought it in the house and show it to my mom, and I want to do something with this. And so my mom like cleared off the dining room table, and we were like making a splint out of popsicle sticks and and athletic tape or whatever. So that kind of support of me just kept that wonder alive inside of me, right? So I knew I was going to do something in the sciences.
Hence the veterinarian stuff.
Hence the veterinarian, right? When you grow up in Kanab, right, and you know that you're interested in animals, what do you do in Kanab if you're interested in animals? You're a veterinarian, right? So that was kind of the only thing that I knew of,
right?
Which is why I was drawn to that. But then, I'm in graduate school and just out of graduate school, and I start teaching for the first time, and so I'm getting to share my passion, my wonder about the natural world with my learners, and that was just intoxicating for me, right? And so at this point in my career, I cannot imagine doing anything else with my life. The fact that we as faculty at the at SUU get to help young people set goals and then help them achieve those goals, there's no more rewarding work in the world to me.
I appreciate that. So I'm going to tease you a little bit, though. Do you miss, now that you're in more administrative capacities, do you miss that, or is that why you love the requirement to teach?
I miss it more than I can even articulate. So I've had to reframe kind of the way that I think about this whole process, right? Because my job now is to support faculty so that they can do that amazing work, right? So I help bring resources to the table and all those things that they need in order to do that work. So I'm one step removed, but in some ways I've got even a broader reach than I had as an individual faculty member. But do I miss it? Oh my gosh, do I miss it every single day?
I can imagine.
For me, being in the classroom, it is high energy work. I mean, if you're doing it well and you're providing really engaging learning opportunities for students, it takes a ton of time. It takes a ton of energy. But for me, when the students are there, they're engaged, they're invigorated, they're excited about that. There's an energy that they give off that I then pick up on. So it's this reciprocal thing, right, where I'm fed by that work. Administrative work, not so much. It's harder to be fed by things when you're managing budgets and solving problems and all the stuff that you have to do. But again, it's been some reframing for me. I'm helping the faculty be the frontline workers and be engaged in that really awesome work.
And you still get to teach here and there.
Yep, absolutely.
To me, it's not that much different than someone who loves dirt bikes, so they open up a dirt bike shop and they find they still have to deal with all the financials and all the stuff so that they can continue promoting what they love to do, right? And
absolutely.
It's just kind of the nature of the beast.
And as you kind of move on in your career and your earning needs increase, right? You've got to sort of move around a little bit. So it's sort of the reality of being a grown-up.
Yeah, that happens. Sorry, and I was also thinking of this analogy of a basketball player, and when they've reached their heyday, then they're a coach, and then maybe they're like the team manager or something, in professional sports.
Yeah.
But then my digressive thoughts went to a Jack Black quote from School of Rock: "Those who can't do teach, and those who can't teach Jim." And
oh gosh,
I'm sorry.
Well, I can assure you that my faculty can do, and they still do.
Well, and that's actually part of the university level. Is a lot of faculty in various areas are required to be doing, that's great grammar, are required to still do research and practical implementation. And I'm not using whatever appropriate academic terminology, but explain that with faculty, because they're not just teaching, they're doing real life looking into things.
Yeah, so in academia, we talk about the trifecta, right? So you've got to be teaching, right? But you also need to be engaged in some sort of scholarship. And that looks different for all the different disciplines, right? Because if you're a theater professor, that might mean you're directing shows or developing costuming for a show or something, right? So their scholarship looks different than, say, an engineer who will literally be engineering things, right? Designing things. And then the third element of that is the service element that I talked about before, right? So all of the faculty at SUU are required to be engaged in all three of those areas. SUU as a teaching-focused institution, more than 50% of our work has to be devoted to teaching. And when we're evaluated every year, that's the primary criterion upon which we're evaluated.
Right.
But the research and the service are close behind. And so, yeah, every single one of those faculty in the College of STEM, they're engaged in some sort of scholarly work, some sort of research. Biologists, I have a biologist who is studying pollinators, right? And they're working on a statewide project to look at the decline of pollinators and what that might mean for farms and pollinating crops and all those sorts of things.
Right.
Faculty in engineering who are, designing ballistics. They're working with a local ballistics manufacturer,
really?
Right, and testing, the shape and whatever of projectiles, that sort of thing. Geoscience. I have a geoscience professor who's working over in the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, looking at riparian areas, so the areas around water and what happens as vegetation is moved around in those areas, and how does that influence water flow, and all that kind of thing. And the cool thing about SUU is whatever that research is that those faculty members are involved in, undergraduate students are also involved there as well, right? You go to a larger institution, a larger university, and it's often just the graduate students who are working with the professors out in the field or in the lab or whatever, working on those projects. Well, in my disciplines, the only graduate program we have is in cybersecurity, right? It's an online program. So if we need research assistants, they're all undergraduates.
Yeah.
So although they may not be able to get an internship, out in some industry or whatever, they could surely be working with a professor on a cool research project. And, those students end up being authors on scientific publications and going to conferences and presenting their work. It's, amazing opportunities for our learners.
See, I'm really glad you walked through that, because I said the Jack Black quote almost tongue-in-cheek. Because I don't think people realize, like, at the universities, and that's why SUU and Southwest Tech are such incredible partners. I don't think people realize the vital role that our academic institutions play in helping feed the workforce pipeline and feed the expertise to the manufacturers, those who are quote unquote doing. But your faculty and your students are there. And they're not only doing the academia or the academic side of learning, in an academic way. How many times can I say academic in different forms? But they're out there working in the real world, doing research, working with companies, and helping solve problems and educate and keep that knowledge fresh and real time. Anyways, I'm blabbing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because if there's not relevance in that work, right, we're going to work ourselves out of a job. So we have to continue to find the relevance in the work that we're doing. It's a really invigorating environment to work in. Just talking with faculty and understanding the little projects that they're working on, who they're collaborating with, and the scope and the breadth of their reach. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So tell me, a couple things. One, tell me what's on the horizon right now for the College of STEM. Mm-hmm. And then I'll ask you, after we do that, I'll ask you kind of my last couple of questions.
So College of STEM, we're always eager to talk with community partners and industry about their needs. Mm-hmm. One of the newer things we're implementing in the college right now we've always had kind of advisory boards, right, mm-hmm. where industry comes in and they consult with us and help us to understand how we can better meet their needs and what our graduates need to know. Mm-hmm. We've retooled that just recently with the help of a National Science Foundation grant that one of our engineering faculty members sought out. It's helping us to stand up this initiative called BILT, BILT, Business and Industry Leadership Teams. And it's a new approach to kind of this advisory board that universities have used for decades. We're bringing in folks from industry to a specific program. So the first one we stood up was mechanical engineering, right? So we brought in folks from firms that hire our mechanical engineers, about a dozen different firms, some of them local, some of them national. Boeing, right? We have someone from Boeing on that board, for example.
Wow.
So they then meet with us 3 or 4 times a year in a meeting with the entire faculty from that program. And so then they start talking about, okay, yes, we've hired some of your graduates. These are the really positive things we're seeing from your graduates. Here are some of the weaknesses that we're seeing.
That's great.
Or maybe here's how industry is changing. And as a consequence, could you potentially implement this thing, or could you add this to your curriculum? It'll make your graduates stand out, right? So those built groups, mechanical engineering was our first one. We have 4 more that we're standing up. We are super excited about those.
That's awesome.
Because the engagement with industry is so much more acute, more focused, right? So that's a big development for us that we're really excited about. And that will help us become informed about, are there programs, new programs that we need to stand up, right? You mentioned chemical engineering, right?
Yeah.
And we always have to be cognizant of what the other institutions in the state are doing and overall need in the state, right? And if the U has a chemical engineering program and Utah State has an chemical engineering program, are those programs fully subscribed? Is there more need? Okay, then maybe we can do something here at SUU.
Right.
If there's a lot of capacity there, the state may not be supportive of us standing up a new degree unless we can prove that there's tremendous local need, right? Can we put 20 chemical engineers to work 4 years from now? Yes. Well, then we'll stand up a degree, right? So those built groups, they help inform those sorts of decisions for us. So that's one thing that we're really excited about. Another thing that we're really excited about in the college is a new building. Our engineering and technology programs in particular have been in this 1970s era bunker on the corner of campus, right, for all of these years. And we are out of room. And you know, it's hard to recruit students into these high-tech areas when the building is so far from high tech. Right. So we're excited about a new building. We have a naming donor in place, a $10 million gift that's come to the university.
That's awesome.
The legislature has given us a little bit of money. We got $500,000 from the legislative session last year to do the kind of planning work for that new building. So we've been through all of that. We know who will be in the building. We know where it will be located. We're kind of on the south edge of campus, kind of behind the Sherritt Library. This will be a 95,000 square foot building.
Wow.
It will be the largest instructional building on campus that we're really excited about. All of our engineering and technology programs will move over there, have beautiful new labs. It's like 1.5 or 2 times the space, depending on the lab. Everything will be top of the line, right? So it'll be much easier to recruit students into those disciplines. Our physics program will move over there as well. And then, before we jumped on the podcast, we were talking about nursing, where your wife works. Our nursing program will move into that new building as well. One of the most rapidly growing programs on our campus. They're not in my college, but a high need, high demand area, lots of growth. They are out of space. So we'll accommodate them in that building and give them the space that they need. So
that's awesome.
That'll be really exciting.
What's the timeline on?
It all kind of depends on funding.
Yeah.
And so this will be largely state funded. So when the legislature is ready to give us the rest of that funding, then we'll go. There's a significant private component to that. And so we're working hard on those private donors to secure those extra dollars. There are some local companies who have committed to help. So that's, another part of that partnership, right? So we're excited to bring them on board and have some named spaces in the building for those local partners. So we're 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there, years out. But it'll be a game changer for the STEM disciplines.
That's
on our campus.
awesome. Yeah, those community partners make a big difference to be able to just do your capital campaign, right? Just to do these facilities. Although in my smart aleck way, if if I could give you a couple bucks to just name your office the David Johnson Memorial Office, I don't have to die to be called the Memorial Office. But anyways, that would just crack me up.
If get out your
you
checkbook,
get out your checkbook, we can talk. That's right. Okay, so to kind of wrap up, tell us to close. What do you want to leave us with? What's something maybe we haven't talked about, or just some parting thoughts that you have.
I hope that the listeners to your podcast feel the value of Southern Utah University for this community, right?
Yeah.
For the size of community, the university is outsized, right? It's a fairly large university in a relatively small town.
Mm-hmm.
The impact is huge, and I know there's some growing pains, and people grumble sometimes about parking and students, and there are growing pains with all of that. But I hope that people really understand the value and what the university brings to this community. Maybe just some statistics. SUU is the largest employer in Iron County by far, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're the third or fourth largest employer in all of Southwest Utah, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of groups in the St. George area who have more employees than SUU does, but and then we just finished a study commissioned by the Kempsey Gardner Institute at the University of Utah. SUU has a $513 million economic impact on this area, right? That is huge.
Yeah.
So, local folks, whether you attend the university yourself or your kids or grandkids attend or not, right? I hope that people understand the value of Southern Utah University to Cedar City and Iron County. And I hope that we bring value in other ways besides just the educational opportunities. When you think about the Shakespeare Festival or the College of Performing and Visual Arts, right? Come and attend a play or a musical performance or, whatever. Come to SUMA, come to the art museum. Send your kids over to participate in activities at the STEM Center, right? There are so many other ways that we engage the community that I hope enrich the lives of people in this community.
Yeah.
That's really what I want to leave people with. Southern Utah University has changed my life, blessed my life, if I can use that term, immeasurably. And I hope it's doing the same for everybody in this community. If not, come and talk. Let's figure out a way that we can help you find value in this place.
Well, I love that. Well, Bill Heyborne, Dean of the College of STEM, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and talk about what you do.
Thanks, David. Always a pleasure.